Hello and welcome to episode 19 of the Haxton Knits podcast. My name is Deanna and I am an American living in Okinawa, Japan. I'm so excited you are joining me today. We have some finished objects, some giveaways, and a new make-along to announce. So let's get started. All right, let's start everything out with an announcement. This is the end of the Challenge Yourself make-along. So this was running for the last 3 months. The purpose of the make-along was to challenge yourself to take on a new technique or a new skill that you've never done before. For me, it was turning some of my woven fabric into wearable clothing. As you'll be able to see here, I did the project I'm calling the Woven into Madness top. So I took all scrap yarns, little bits of leftovers from previous projects, and wove them into a beautiful scarf, and then promptly realized that I live in a hot climate and don't need a beautiful scarf. So I instead took the challenge upon myself to turn it into a top that was wearable, and I have been getting a ton of wear out of this top. So super excited to be done with that. Over on the Haxton Knits podcast group on Ravelry, there was a chatter thread, and I have drawn a random winner from that thread. Yay! So the winner is Emma May, who is located in Australia, which is really exciting for me. You never know when you kick off a channel whether anyone's going to watch, and to have people watching from all over the world is super exciting. Emma took on some double knitting and some brioche knitting in her, what is it called? Cattitude scarf and the Grande double wrap by Cozy Up Knits. So congratulations, I've got a little package going. I mentioned I was going to send kind of an indie Japanese yarn and a big box yarn. So I am going to send on this one. This one is the Mominoki, said that wrong. No, I said it right. Mominoki yarn. I got this for part of the Amirisu Yarn Club. It is technically based in Germany. So, I'm stretching the limits of what I said I was going to do there. But I did get my next installation of the Amirisu Yarn Club, and I didn't really want to give that one up. So I'm going to give that skein on, and then also a couple of skeins of some Japanese big box sock yarns. And this is a small woven notions pouch, which if you watch my episode where I talk about the old house that I toured, I'll put a link below. They talk about the trees that are local to Okinawa that they use for spinning fiber and for the yellow-green dye that you see in this particular project. So fun little Okinawa gift package sending on to you, and thank you all so much. The prize giveaway has closed, but of course the challenge will always remain open. I'll keep that thread open so you guys can all continue to chatter and work on new challenging projects. So with the end of one knit along, I really want to continue doing knit alongs. I think they're just fun and they inspire me and give me more content for this channel. So I am going to start a new knit along. I keep looking at my show notes, which are down here below me. If you watch my channel, you know that when I am on nights, I work downstairs in front of my computer, which means that I have my notes right in front of me. And today I don't. I'm up in my craft room. I guess it's a craft room, guest room. So forgive me if you keep seeing me look down at my notes, but I want to launch another make along because they're so fun. I will not have a prize giveaway for this one. I'm so sorry. If you are a person who wants to donate a prize, a small company or a discount code to your shop or something of the sort, I'd be glad to feature you here. But for now, there are no prizes. This is just going to be a make along for the sake of make alongs. But I am calling this the Stubborn Stash make along. So I was looking through my stash and I found this yarn. I'll show it to you in a minute. So basically, I want you to go into your stash and find that yarn that you have no idea what to do with. The yarn that's just been sitting there, you want to get it out of your stash, you want to use it, you don't want to just let it waste there, but you don't have a plan. So that is the goal of this make along. It's going to run through October, is for you to go into your stash, find that yarn that you have no plan whatsoever for and make a plan. And I think the best part about this kind of a make along is that it means I get to spend lots of time browsing through Ravelry, dreaming up project ideas, because inevitably when I do that, I end up finding lots of patterns. And so eventually down the line, I'll cast on all of them, even if it's not, you know, specifically for this challenge. So for me, I have actually picked this skein of yarn. I actually have 5 of these. So one day I went to Hobby Lobby and I said to myself, I am not going to go look at the yarn. I don't need any yarn. I was there for something unrelated. But of course I ended up in the yarn section, as you do, and these skeins of yarn were super duper marked down. I think I ended up spending about $1 a skein. I'm trying to find the fiber content on here. Yeah, anyway. So this is Lion's Pride Wool Spun by Lion brand yarn. It is a super inexpensive yarn. It is 80% acrylic, 20% wool, and super bulky. And I have 5 skeins of them because why not? They were $1 a skein. So $5 for enough super chunky yarn to make a full sweater project if I wanted to. And they have sat in my stash ever since and not moved a muscle. So that is my goal, is to get these 5 giant skeins of yarn out of my stash. It will make lots of room for me to put more yarn into my stash wall because, you know, I absolutely follow the rule where if I don't have any more room for yarn, I don't buy any more yarn. So that is going to be our goal. So the next make-along is the Stubborn Stash make-along running through the end of October. And I hope to see lots of participation and chatter. And I know I'm going to see a lot of beautiful project ideas and things coming out of that. All right, next on the list for the day are finished objects. I am very excited when I have a finished object because I do tend to feel like week after week I repeat myself talking about these whips and sharing the details. So whenever I have a finished object, it means it's the last time I have to talk about that project on my channel. And I'm always kind of relieved because I feel like then I'm not repeating myself as much and hopefully I'll have some new content. But those of you who have been watching for a while know that I have been participating in the Knits in Translation Knit Along, which is being hosted over on Melissa's channel, Knitting the Stash. And this is done. Okay, there's a couple of ends to weave in, but it's done. It's done and it's blocked. The page 4 pullover. Okay, so those of you who don't know, the Knits in Translation Knit Along was a challenge to pick up a knitted pattern that isn't written in a language that is not your native language. And of course, I'm living here in Okinawa. I don't speak passable Japanese. I fool myself and say that I have enough, but really, I don't speak a passable amount of Japanese. And so it was really fun to actually be able to go into the local community before all the lockdowns started and go to a bookstore and browse the knitting patterns and pull a knitting pattern and actually be able to knit it. So for me, it's been super exciting to participate in this because it means that I have a little bit more of a connection with the knitting community here in Japan. Something that's often blocked by my own language insufficiencies, that I don't have enough Japanese to participate all the time. So this was, of course, meant to be a full sweater. Because of the climate, I'm going to wear it as a t-shirt or a tank top. I will insert pictures here of me wearing it because I know it's hard for you to see it when I'm holding it up here. But I did use a Japanese yarn. So this is Wister brand Nostalgic Tweed. Oh, which is right here. I have labels, yay. Okay, Wister brand Nostalgic Tweed. This is our label. When I went to gather supplies to talk about this and clean out my bag, I was thinking, how did I get all of this trash in my project bag? And it's not, it's the 10,000 labels. Because for whatever reason, here in Japan, every ball of yarn I can find is a little 40-gram ball of yarn, which means in order to make this project, I needed 10 or 12 balls of yarn to make a t-shirt. And it's not fingering weight. You know, this is I would say it's a worsted, maybe worsted to Aran weight. So it's really frustrating to have to buy 10,000 balls of yarn and carry all those labels around. I guess I could just, you know, throw them away like a good girl. But the yarn is, I would call it like a big box Japanese brand yarn. But it was great. It was beautiful to work with. I have no complaints. I would definitely grab this yarn again. I even have some very expensive balls of kind of boutique-y tweed yarns that I honestly like this better than them. So no complaints about the yarn choice. I did end up using the contrast edges because I ran out of the yarn I wanted, but this particular pattern is knit from side to side, so you cast on along this dark kind of, it's a dark brown. Work a little bit of ribbing and then you launch into your pattern worked sideways. There is no shaping at all, which is also lovely. And I have really, really enjoyed doing a sideways knit pattern because there's never a dull part. You're not in this like body section of just straight stockinette stitch or reverse stockinette stitch knitting. You have always the cuff, the body, the yoke, the collar, all on every single row. So it just really makes it a much more fun and enjoyable pattern. I know last time I talked to you about my little trick for making a nice edge when you are changing colors in ribbing, and that is to add a row of knit stitch, and those knit stitches will just kind of disappear into your pattern. So I did do that for all 4 of these. And like I said before, originally I had cast on this section in this gold color, and then when I found out that I was running out of yarn, I had to do a little bit of sweater surgery. So I did pick up the stitches at the edge of the ribbing, cut the yarn, unravel 1 row so I had all the live stitches, and then I was able to salvage enough of that gold yarn to finish this pattern. So a little bit of yarn chicken, but it turned out really nicely. Now I just have to wait for the weather to cool down enough to wear it, because even now it is, it's been about 90 degrees and I would say 70 to 85% humidity. So nice and warm, nice and humid, nice and sauna-y out here. And like I said, this is the magazine that this came from. It's the Knit Marché magazine. There are crochet and knit patterns in here. I've always said, I love that the Japanese knitting patterns, they don't shy away from complex patterns. I've found that really refreshing. Sometimes in the US, books tend to be more often beginner-friendly patterns, and then the more complex things you sort of have to go looking for. They may be like a specific book that's all more complex patterns, whereas like the big brand magazines tend to be a little bit easier, beginner-friendly levels. I'm definitely thinking of like Vogue knitting and things like that. You usually see a little bit intermediate to beginner level patterns. Interweave knits, I've found more advanced patterns in. That was one of the first magazines that I really was excited to purchase and get subscriptions of when I first started knitting. But here in Japan, there are like a mix of complexity. I've definitely seen just some crazy patterns. I don't think there's any in here in this particular magazine that stand out to me. But I've just seen some like wild intarsia patterns, wild cable patterns, strange construction patterns that you're like, what in the world is going on? And just side by side in all of the magazines. So it's kind of interesting to see the different skill level represented in some of these magazines. I think that's all I have to say about that. I catch myself rambling a little bit here, but that is the end of my participation in the Knits and Translation knit along. Super excited to have that finished object off the needles, because I was just craving a new cast on. I really am. I need new things to work on, or else I'm going to go a little bit stir crazy here. In other crafting content, I do have some spinning, which I have recently started. If you follow my Instagram page, you probably saw the difficulties of spinning with 2 brand new kittens in the house. So there's a lot of time spinning and then stopping and then pulling the kittens out of the spinning wheel and then spinning and stopping and spinning and stopping as one of them leans in closer to get their nose stuck where it doesn't belong. But I am slowly making progress. I have put away my Cattitude spinning for now until I can get some kitten-free time to work on it. But in the meanwhile, this is Nest Fiber Club. When I first started spinning, signed up for several of these fiber clubs, which I really love. You get these very manageable bumps of yarn, which are pre-dyed, and it just gives I think it's a good way to get your teeth into different fibers and just practice spinning lots and lots of yarn. As a result, though, I have a lot of hand spun yarn that I've never done anything with and don't necessarily all match or are all different fiber types, all different colors, but still a fun project. This one is the March 2018, so that's how long this one's been sitting around in my stash. It's my goal when the fiber club started to overwhelm me and I realized I had this mountain of fiber that I didn't spin fast enough. I turned it off and I said that I wouldn't buy any more yarn for fiber club until I spun through this. So I'm getting there. I think I have maybe 3 more of these to get through, and then I am definitely going to force myself to do some sort of project using all of these yarns before I re-up for another round of spinning fiber clubs. This one, the colorway is called Borrowed Days, and it's a Polworth and silk blend. I initially shied away from spinning it when I was a new spinner because I thought silk would be tricky, and when I've worked with like 100% silk or very high contents of silk, it can be a little bit tricky, but this is not tricky at all. This is a beautiful yarn. I did separate it by colorway, so I'll put up a picture here, but I have the sort of greens and blues separated from the more red colors. And I'm going to do 2 separate skeins of yarn, so they'll be complementary but different colors, and then I'll try to work them together into a colorwork project of some sort, maybe another shirt. So that is upcoming, in progress. I guess that's my whip, one of my whips. All right, whip number 2, let's get to it. Works in progress. I don't know why the spinning ended up as a not a work in progress. It's a work in progress. I guess you could say it was a new cast on, a new project. But for my ongoing whips, you guys will recognize the Portage cardigan, which I am working up in Malabrigo Arroyo in the colorway Glitter. I talked extensively about this colorway in my previous episodes, but be careful if you are new here when you order these colorways, because these are both the same colorway. They do not come in dye lots, so you just need to be careful because they look very, very different. I even thought they were too different to just alternate skeins. So what I did instead was I did alternate skeins on the more closely matched colors, which gave me the body of this sweater and the sleeves. These are a little bit tricky to see. And then for the cuffs and the button band and the pockets, I'm going to use the other colorway, which I have started now. So I've got the entire body and the entire sleeve done. I did take it off the needles and block it just to make sure it was going to fit right before I continued getting too far down the path of this particular project. It just looked really small to start with, so I'm glad I did that. It does fit really nicely now. I picked this particular sweater because I love the pockets and it looked like it laid really nicely. And since moving to this warmer climate, I don't need as many pullover sweaters. So some cardigan sounded nice for cold air conditioners inside or the fall here in Okinawa. So that project continues and you will see it again in another episode for sure. As I mentioned with my finished object, the page 4 pullover, I did the same technique when I switched to the ribbing here, where the first row of ribbing is actually all knit stitches, and you'll find that those knit stitches just sort of disappear into the fabric when you do this, but it makes a little bit of a cleaner edge where you don't see the original color poking through. So I am using that technique here. It's just sort of become a standard in my toolkit. So for stash enhancement, I'm so excited. So I signed up for the Amirisu Yarn Club several months ago, and I knew I was getting a new installment in July, and I was just like sweating, waiting for this to come. Why didn't it come? Isn't it going to come? And checking my email, and it literally arrived on the 31st of July at about 6 p.m. So as late as you could probably possibly get it delivered to your house here in Japan, but it has arrived. Yay! Okay, so if you are still waiting for yours to come in the mail, if you're an Amirisu Yarn Club subscriber, now is going to be the time to go away. Bye-bye. But I signed up for the night theme. I know I've mentioned there was a day theme and a night theme for this club. I picked the night theme, and this month we got yarn from Lemon Jelly Pool, which is a Japanese brand. It's based out of Tokyo, so very excited. This is the first time I've ever actually gotten to touch it, and according to the newsletter I got with this, usually their colorways sell out within a matter of minutes, so it's kind of exciting to get my hands on this. The yarn club this month is a merino sock yarn, so it's 100% superwash merino, and the colorway is Soiree, and here it is. Ta-da! So it's kind of a blue-green base with dark blue and kind of yellowy green speckles all the way through it. I unwrapped one of them because, you know, I'm not very good at getting them back in order. So let me show you this guy. Very beautiful. I'll have to take pictures of it. You know my lighting isn't so good in here, but the letter that comes with it, as always, says if you chose the night colorway, your skeins have a tranquil blue-green base with touches of chartreuse and speckles of brown and navy. Although it is a more mellow shade, we think you will find its playfulness to be distinct to Lemon Jelly Pool. I'd really like to see the day colorways on these too, because I know this brand is particularly known for its bright and interesting colors. Man, they do such a good job of describing this. Do you like? My description was blue-green with dark blue and yellowy green. And they have, you know, chartreuse and beautiful. Anyway. As always, the Yarn Club also comes with patterns. So this one is a shawl, which is the Beckwith Shawl by Rosemary Hill. And it's a sort of shallow crescent-shaped shawl, which is designed, according to the pattern, to be worked with this yarn. So I'm very excited about it. I'm debating whether I'm going to knit this pattern or not. This is always sort of my problem with yarn clubs that come with patterns, is patterns are just so like taste specific. There are so many things people will or won't knit, and not everyone wants to knit a shawl, and not everyone wants to knit, you know, socks. So for me, I would rather just get more yarn than the price of patterns. But this one is very pretty, and I might cast it on. I mentioned last week thinking about casting on another one of the Starflake, the mystery knit along from Stephen West. And so I also thought this yarn would be really nice to do for that as well, especially because I got 2 skeins of it, so I have enough to pair it with another color to get that larger shawl completed, I think. So very excited. I have one more installation of this yarn club to go. I get it in September, I think. I am hoping it's a little bit of a larger quantity because this was kind of a pricey yarn club, and for the 3 skeins and 2 patterns I've gotten so far, I'm hoping that the next one you actually get a couple more skeins of yarn than what I've received so far. But we will wait and see, and I will of course share them when I get to you. I'm very excited to get to use these brands of yarn that I've never used before. I hope you'll forgive the change in angle here as we move into the Life in Okinawa section, but there was a very cute, oh gosh, how do I point at her? Kitten in the window. So I mentioned before that our mail has been disturbed lately, and finally these suction cup cat beds that I purchased probably 2 months ago came in, and one of the cats is in there now. They both play in them and love them a lot, but Cyrilla, our Siamese cat particularly, is constantly in there catching some warmth and sun from the window, and she's there now, so I thought you might enjoy a little snippet of the kittens behind the curtain. So my Life in Okinawa section, you know, since the emergence of coronavirus has taken a little bit of a nosedive. It's just, you can't justify going to cultural events or like festivals or things like that when there's a pandemic going on. But I did think that this week I could at least, walk around my neighborhood, show you some interesting things there. I did go out to one of the more remote beaches here so I could walk around by myself. And I thought I would take you along for that journey. So first of all, I took a trip out to Glass Beach here in Okinawa. There's actually two that showed up on the map that were called Sea Glass Beach. And I attempted to get to the more remote of those, thinking that they would be likely not populated by people. I was there, I think it was a Tuesday morning at about 8 in the morning. So there was not much chance of there being a lot of people out on the beach that day. I did, however, have some problems locating that more remote beach. I had read a couple of reviews that said you have to go down this dirt road and that GPS is sometimes hard to get you there. And sure enough, when I followed the GPS, I just kept ending up in this field. It was a farmer's field, a little farmer's road. There was no parking that I could see. There was no trail that I could see. I probably could have just parked my car somewhere and gotten out and walked around and tried to find a path down to the beach. But it was pretty heavily overgrown with plants, and we are in the height of snake season here in Okinawa. And it is a legit concern to worry about the poisonous snakes on this island. So I chose not to travel in my flip-flops and shorts through a heavily overgrown area to try to find that beach. So I did end up turning my GPS around and going to the more accessible Sea Glass Beach on this island, which you should be seeing pictures of right now as I talk. It was a sweltering hot day, so I was there with my umbrella. This is not an unusual thing to see here in Japan. It is very much, particularly with the older generation and with more mainland Japan people, you will see people at the beach that are covered in long sleeves, long pants, heavy visors, and umbrellas to stay out of the sun. It's sort of a standard of beauty to be more pale and more white. Again, mostly in the older generation and more from mainland than from Okinawa, but it's definitely not uncommon to see people covered away from the sun. You'll see a lot of driving gloves and things like that too, to keep your hands from getting a tan while you drive. So I was there with my umbrella, trying not to melt in the sun as I picked my way through the glass. If you've ever been to a Sea Glass Beach, this is my second one. I went to one in California too once. It's always, to me, sort of a conflicted feeling. Like, it's really cool. You get to find all this glass tumbled by the ocean and pick through it. But then also in your mind, you're thinking, well, this is really a bunch of garbage that got tossed into the ocean and is now washing its way ashore here. So I'm always conflicted about it. But for this particular day, it was a good solitary activity I could do to get me out of the house and, stop feeling like I'm such a shut-in and talking to myself on my camera all day. Another fun thing that was there were a ton of crabs. In our house, we like the less loved critters. We love little crabs and snails, mud skippers, which I'll talk about later, pigeons. Those are our favorites in this household. My husband particularly, mud skippers and pigeons are his favorite animals. So I had fun just sitting there filming all the little crabs skittering around. I found a sea snail that I hadn't seen before. I don't know what kind of snail it was, but really cute. It is cicada season here, so some of this film I'm going to choose to not put the sound in just to save your eardrums. But if you're not familiar with cicadas, maybe you didn't grow up in a part of the world that had them, but I certainly did. They are a bug. I don't know if they're a beetle or a locust or I don't know what they classify as, but they make a sound that I feel like could probably do permanent hearing damage if you stood near them for very long. And so at least once I'll unlock the sound in this video so you can hear the cicadas talking. So yeah, that was my adventure to Sea Glass Beach. The next thing I wanted to do was to walk around my neighborhood and show you some of the shrines. So I live in Awase, I've mentioned that before. And actually it was interesting as I was trying to look up what some of these shrines were. I found this picture of Awase Airfield in I think, what, 1947-ish, you know, sometime after the war. It's exciting to see how this area has grown up and recovered and rebuilt after the destruction that was World War II here on this island. Anyway, I digress there. Let's get back to the shrines. So in my neighborhood, there are a ton of little shrines, little sacred sites, and I don't always know what they are. I try to look them up. It tends to be a mix of Buddhist and Shinto sites, and it's actually kind of interesting. I took a tour, I think I was up on the mainland, and I did a temple tour through Kyoto, and there were just so many sites where it was a Buddhist shrine and a Shinto shrine sharing the same space, which you just don't see, especially in the United States. Like, you won't see a Catholic church and a Jewish temple in the same lot of land. So I just, you know, interesting. That's all. Just interesting to me. So here in Owase, there are two big shrines. The big one is the Buddhist Ryugu, and right next to it, so again, sharing the same sort of space, is the Shinto Shrine, which is the Owase Bijuru. And that is the big shrine in the neighborhood. I mentioned my episode around New Year's time that, I mean, there were just lines of cars, lines of people wrapped around the block for a whole week after the new year to come to the shrine for their blessing for the year. But it seems like everywhere, just scattered through the whole neighborhood, there are these tons of little shrines. I don't ever know what they are or what they're for, but I wanted to show them to you. So the first one you're hopefully seeing, I call it the Corner Tree Shrine. It's literally right next to the laundromat. It's got this huge, beautiful tree that I imagine is significantly older than I think it is. It's just a gorgeous sight. There are two small shrines with rice bowl, and sometimes you'll see some incense there. Shrine you're going to be seeing, I call it the apartment shrine. So there's a little apartment complex near my house, and just kind of wedged into the parking lot of the apartment complex is this teeny gated off little site. Again, I don't know if it's associated with the apartment complex or if it is something much older. Hopefully it's something much older, and they just chose to protect it as they built the apartment in that spot. If you're maybe, you know, Japanese or Okinawan or Buddhist or Shinto, and you have some insight into these things, I would love to hear from you. So maybe comment below and share your information with me and my viewers. This is kind of the fun part about being displaced into a different country, and I don't really know some of these answers, and right now I don't have a person I can ask. So I do my best Googling and doing research for the show, but I don't always find it. There's two more kind of sites I want to talk about. This next site is actually really interesting to me because it's a little cluster of 3 different shrines. There's like a little teeny one, a medium one, and a big one, and they're all right next to each other. I'll show you the film of this. And the bigger one, I don't know what it is. The site just, it gives me the heebie-jeebies, you know, like your skin crawls when you're there. And I'm sure that's just my imagination playing with me, but there's just a feeling at that site. I think probably what contributes to that feeling is that I often walk through there in the middle of the night and it's dark and there's no lights, and there's just this you know, old kind of rubble and stone behind a gate where you can't really see them. There's a little well at the site. It's interesting. Oh man, I'm just rambling at this point. And of course, as I was walking around looking at all these shrines, I couldn't help myself. I had to snap pictures of all the Shisa dogs and the guardian dogs as I was on my way. In several of my episodes, I've mentioned that in Okinawa, it's tradition to put out 2 guardian dogs. In fact, you can see mine behind me there. That's not the traditional place for them, but they are supposed to guard the entrance of your home. And they're always paired, so the one on the left will always be the female and she has her mouth closed, and the one on the right will be the male with his mouth open. And so I didn't take pictures of both the male and female at every house I went to, but you can watch this little slideshow of images and see which ones are the boys and which ones are the girls as you go. And that, I took all those pictures on my way to my favorite shrine in the neighborhood, which is the Ryugushin shrine. This one is a little bit hard to find if you're not looking for it, if you don't know where you're going. So what you have to do in Owase is you walk to the end of the seawall. And when you reach the end of the seawall, there's a cement barrier, and you have to go, off the sidewalk and around that barrier. And it hugs the perimeter fence of one of the military installations, which put me off. It deterred me from going exploring for a long time, because typically you don't want to, go around perimeter fences if you don't have to. But this one is heavily trafficked. I saw so many people coming and going along this site that I thought there must be something more back there. And so I followed the well-worn footpath around the edge of the seawall, and eventually a new bit of seawall picks up, and there's another shrine there, just kind of wedged into the edge of the seawall. And just a gorgeous sight. I often see people fishing there. I see the Japanese kids, the little boys in particularly, love to go down the end of that pier and then jump in the water as a good place to swim. There's a little outlet river that reaches the ocean there, and I suspect they have fun swimming in that spot. So these are just kind of the fun places in my neighborhood. While I was down at that shrine, I decided to wander and take a peek at those mud skippers I was talking about. So mud skippers, if you don't know them, are little fish that can come out of the water and hop around in the air, in the water, out of the water, and are just some of my favorite little creatures here. All the nature videos you'll see them. They look big. The ones here in Okinawa, I don't know if I'm just catching smaller ones, but they're not very big. They're I don't know, small shrimp sized. That's not a good. You'll see the pictures, but it's a favorite pastime of mine to sit on the beach and record all of the little hermit crabs and all of the little mud skippers skipping around, doing their thing, having their fights, and generally just doing their little fishy thing. I don't know what I'm talking about at this point. Gosh, guys, this is a ramble. So hopefully you have seen all of the fish and all of the shrines and all of the seashells and sea glass. And that is life in Okinawa right now. We are having a resurgence of coronavirus here. We were, I think, 6 weeks or 8 weeks 100% free of it on the island. And there are now some outbreaks in town and on the military bases, which of course is always causing some strife in the newspapers. You'll always see newspapers talking about US versus Japan relations and the military bases and things like that. I don't choose to get in on that discussion here on this channel, but if you're interested, you can always look up like the Okinawa Times or something like that. I did see the sort of international news. CNN was playing some news clips about the coronavirus here in Okinawa among military members. So it's accessible if you want to go looking up that kind of information, but relatively low cases compared to the rest of the world. I think we're up to about 200 or so on the island. Still concerning. I saw 70 new cases yesterday reported among the local community. So lots of lockdown, lots of staying inside, only essential shopping allowed. And the last episode I talked to you, we were just finishing up a brew day. I was brewing a Scottish ale, and that has finished. It is complete. I hit my gravity that I was aiming for, so I think I'm going to be ending up at about a 6% alcohol. The experiment this time was with a new water source, since I had some poor success since arriving here on island. I think it's just the water softening service that I have here has kind of screwed up my water chemistry. So I did use some not distilled water, purified water. If you're a home brewer, you know, don't use distilled water. It's missing some of those elements that you need to make really good beer. Now the beer is all loaded up in my keg and is currently carbonating. I did kind of run into a little bit of a challenge. I'm trying to replace the lines on my keg for the first time, and I don't have the tools to get it done. And I just haven't justified, you know, is it mandatory, is it essential shopping to go buy a tool to take apart my kegerator so that I can have a new beer line? I don't think it is. So that is, I have a few days to think on this problem before I have to decide. Otherwise I won't get to drink my delicious beer. So beer is in the works. Hopefully next episode you'll see a beautiful glass of Scotch ale for me to share with you. You can't taste it. I'm sorry. It doesn't work that way. I can't pour my beer across the internet, or I would. Yeah, that's a lot of rambling today. All right, guys, that is all I have for you this week. As always, if you want to find me on Instagram or Ravelry, you can find me under Haxton Knits. If you want to participate in any of my make-alongs, you can pop over to the Haxton Knits Ravelry group. And as always, if you want to share any of your make-along progress, you can do that using the hashtag HaxtonKnitsMAL. For all of my make-alongs, works in progress are always invited. Any sort of craft is allowed as long as you can fit it into the challenge. So I don't care if you crochet or weave or felt, or I don't care, whatever, woodwork, if you can make it fit in the challenge. Of course, this month's challenge is going to be the stubborn stash. So either working your stubborn stash yarn into your woodworking, or if you have a stash of wood, the stubborn wood in your stash. Stubborn wood is not the topic of this week. Anyway, you guys have a great day. I hope that you are safe, and I hope that you are finding a way to keep yourself entertained, getting some sunshine during this lockdown. And thankfully, here in Okinawa, we haven't had any typhoons yet. I heard someone the other day say we haven't had any of the T word yet. It's one of those bad words, like saying quiet in the hospital, you know? So far we have launched into typhoon season and have yet to have a typhoon hit this island. I will bring you lots of updates when that happens, so you can see the mayhem that is a giant wind and rainstorm in an island completely built on cement block houses. And you guys can see me shutter up all the windows. So here is hoping you have a safe day, good weather, happy knitting, and something excellent to drink. I'll see you next week.